Hello YouTube, Uncle Lucky here, and welcome back to another episode of Comic Book Quiz and Art. Today, we're still working on our A to Z series, and more Amazing Spider-Man, if you can't tell. Now, this goes back to what I was saying in another video, that if you can't tell, man, I love white backgrounds, and color pop in the front, white in the back, or maybe a little bit of something. You're going to see a theme here, because there's probably a lot more of these in the collection to come. But it's something about these kind of covers that just, they draw me in. They're just really cool. Now, this one is The Amazing Spider-Man 544. This was entitled One More Day. This directly follows, if I remember correctly, this directly follows Civil War, the aftermath of Civil War. And in here, Spider-Man and Iron Man are definitely at odds because Tony Stark convinced Peter Parker to give up his identity for the greater good, and he did, and a lot of bad things happened after that, and he blames Tony for it. I didn't follow the Civil War storyline. Everybody was telling me about it at the time, and I never went, I didn't rush out and get it because, again, life happens, things were going on, but this cover is just absolutely amazing. I think I picked it up with the other ones at the same time. I think I made one or two trips into the comic book store, and it was just kind of, I saw this cover and just, I don't care about the story. I read through it honestly, and it didn't do anything for me, and the art inside is just not good. That's neither here nor there. It was the cover that did it for me. Just like I said, the whitewash and the white backgrounds and just the art on the cover is just phenomenal, amazing, beautiful. But now you get into the inside here. Not so good. I can't stand the way the artist does Peter Parker. There's a particular page in here that it's just let me get to it here. This is just, that's just creepy. Okay, that's Peter Parker, and he's almost got bug eyes. It's just super creepy the way the artist did his rendition of Peter Parker. It was just gnarly. I didn't like it at all. I wouldn't have collected this series in any other way just because of the cover, but it did have one really cool scene. You can see Peter and Tony are getting ready to get after it. They're arguing, fighting. He's angry because of something that happened to Aunt May, and he blames Iron Man for it. So they get into a big battle royale. He's out of costume, and Stark's got the advantage on that. So they're fighting it. But then this one cool scene, you get into more of them battling it on, and this terrible, it's just so gnarly the way that he made these characters look. But just one cool scene in the book. Peter has had enough of dealing with Tony and his bullshit, so he lets fly the spiders of war. He uses every ounce of juice he's got in his webs. You can see the face he's making. He's just like, I guess he's never had to shell it out like that before. But then, when he's done, that's what Stark looks like. He's just one big ball of webs, and he can't do anything. And he proceeds to pummel him a little bit. Yeah, I mean, that was the only cool scene in the comic book as far as the storyline goes. For me it was kind of throwaway, but cover is just amazing. I'll always remember this cover. Now we go to The Amazing Spider-Man number 373. Now, at this time I was collecting Spider-Man, there was a weird thing going on for me. Anybody remember back in the day you could send off for your comic books? They had the thing in the back of the comic book. I don't know if you find it in this issue or not. They had a thing in the back of these comic books that you could send off, pay your subscription and all that, and they would send them to you in the mail. Well, this was a big thing that was going on in the 90s, that the mailman would come and he'd stick them in the mailbox for you when your titles were coming in. That was the biggest mistake ever. we're talking 1989, 1990, somewhere in there, 92. I was pretty young. I don't know, 12 or 13. It's not like I had a car and I could go to the comic book store readily anytime I wanted to. So a lot of these were coming in the mail, and that was the biggest mistake ever. And I wanted my comic books and I couldn't readily get them, so that was the only way to get them, and so on and so forth. But these poor things would show up in the mail, and I think the mailman would roll them up. He'd stick them in his butt crack, run over them with his truck a couple of times, and then stuff them in the mailbox sideways. It was dreadful. I am actually very lucky that I kept a lot of comic books intact. Again, during this time, I'd say the 3.6 time, 3.7s. This is 373. These stories were terrible. They were getting worse and worse, and it was at about that point in time that, even as a young kid, I started thinking, man, these are just, every cover was just so overly done, and he was fighting 12, 13 guys on a cover, and it just got so out of control and ridiculous. I hated it. So the thing was, though, this cover pretty much caught my eye. I really liked this one. It's probably been done 1,000 times before, but this was a really good cover. I enjoyed it a lot. It's pretty. It's neat. Him covered up in his own webs and all that. Yeah, the story was throwaway. The art was, it was okay. I mean, nothing special, nothing great or amazing. There was nothing that ever drew me to this particular artist or this series by him. Wasn't good. Wasn't bad, wasn't good. Just the stories were dreadful, though. Really, really bad. I can't even say enough about how bad these stories were. But that cover, one of the very few I got in the mail, into the mailbox that wasn't completely demolished. Which brings me to this last one. This almost didn't happen. You see, I got this issue in the mail along with the other one I was just talking about, and it wasn't this issue. I didn't get this issue in the mail. I got another issue in the mail, and I think after he let the dogs chew on it and he used it as toilet paper, then he stuffed it in the mailbox, and that's what it was. So that weekend, I told my uncle about it. He was the one who got me into collecting, and he brought me to the comic book store to pick up a new one. And I had just got, I think it was the last one on the shelf, or there was maybe one more up there, but this one was the one that almost didn't happen. And this one I also consider a pretty big one in my personal collection because, as you all know, Carnage ended up being a very big part of the comic books. He's still, he's got his own series running right now, so Carnage was a huge one for me as a kid. And to say that I got this one and it was intact after the mailbox incident, that's pretty impressive. Again, beautiful cover, whitewash background, a theme you can see. I love the white in the background. This just probably one of the coolest covers I'd say in my collection. And I'm not just saying that because it's the first appearance of Carnage. If this had been anybody else with that kind of a background and the way they had done it, it's just beautiful to me. Again, the art, nothing truly special. Peter's got 90s hair. Grunge, baby, grunge. It's always funny to read comic books after years and years, or look at comic books from the 50s or the 60s and just see how we looked at a time, and that was a mirror image of what we were as human beings, and what we looked like. These were being drawn for the time. So his leather jacket, and it's funny. But it's got a little bit of Venom in it, and got a little bit of Carnage, and this is probably one of the better stories because they introduced Carnage and he was just such a vile bastard. So that was really cool. So there you go. That's another series of A to Z. Probably be working into the B's here pretty soon. That was quick. So you guys have a good one. I'll catch you on the next episode.